started writing Food for the Archons as a book of despair after watching my father die in 2013. During his transition, I experienced a series of paranormal and psychic events that left me feeling that I had either gone completely crazy or fell into humanity's darkest secret. I spent the next 5 years conducting extensive research, and I quickly learned that what I had experienced was real. My journey brought me to an understanding that showed me that despite the terrifying reality of an unseen predator, we as humans have a forgotten power. Just knowing this brings us tremendous hope in what once seemed a dark reality. I wrote this book for me in hopes of gaining a better understanding of our reality and relationship to it. But my hope is that you will find as much value in reading it as I did in writing it. I Am Human, Food for the Archons, humanity's psychic connections, simulated realities, parallel worlds, and the manipulation of mankind. It's available on Amazon.com and at sixcentsmedia.net and wherever books are sold. I'm Dennis Nappy II, reminding you to let your intuition be your guide. Thank you.
Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong in the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there.
Okay, friends, as promised, once again, I have the great Edward Reardon on the line with me, joining us on the Seiker podcast. Edward is a remote viewer. You may have found him on YouTube sharing his ASMR voice, the soothing sounds of Edward, as he goes through his many fascinating remote viewing sessions. Or you may know him from crypto viewing and the fantastic work that he does there. Either way, listening to Edward speak is such a wonderful experience. He's someone that I look up to as a role model. I'm so thankful to also call him a friend in the work that he does. I always find it inspiring and thought-provoking, leaving me months, in some cases years, to ponder the conversations that we had. So tonight we're going to have a freestyle form of a conversation, just seeing where it leads us down the rabbit hole as we talk about remote viewing. Edward, my friend, how are you tonight, sir?
Hey, Dennis, I'm doing great. And thank you for that very, very kind intro. And yeah, I'm always interested to get into a free form kind of conversation, see where it goes. You just never know where it's going to go. And that's the interesting part.
That's the fun part, man. And I'll tell you, every time, I mean, we talk every week, but every time you and I have a chance to talk just like this, I'm always just left wanting more, because you've had such a fantastic journey. And you've been such a good friend to the show as well. And I'm always thankful that you take the time to come. For anybody who's not familiar with your work, do you want to just give a brief background on who you are?
Well, who I am in regards to remote viewing?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a big, thick book, but let's just talk about remote viewing.
Okay. As far as remote viewing is concerned, it's one of those life experiences that, people like us have, where something is making its way through, and then you just happen to turn on the TV or whatever, or the radio, and boom, there it is, and somebody's talking about it, and you're like, oh my God, that's and your brain just lights up. Well, that's what happened is in regards to remote viewing for me, when the first documentary about remote viewing was broadcast in 1996 on the Discovery Channel. Mm-hmm. And I recorded the show on VHS back in the day. I watched it 1,000 times. All the guys were on there, Ingo Swann, Ed Dames, Mel Riley, Lynn Buchanan, all these larger than life looking figures. But that triggered my interest to go towards remote viewing. And I went through all kinds of other experiences and different types of disciplines and all those kinds of things. And in the end, I went back to remote viewing because it deals with verifiable feedback. Mm-hmm. And with the many things that I had dove into, verifiable feedback typically wasn't part of the process. And it was something that I really, really needed and became very kind of like the whole idea of the verifiable feedback part became a main issue for me because I was disillusioned by various other things. So
Right.
And that's what remote viewing offered because of the way that it was presented, coming out of the military and all that kind of stuff, gave it kind of that kind of non new age kind of perspective, and I appreciated that.
Yeah, it has the more of a scientific approach to it with that verification, which I find to be, because when you go through this psychic journey and this growth point, there's a lot of moments where you're like, is that my imagination or is that? And you find feedback that matters to you and it works. But remote viewing has a much more tangible, nope, this is exactly what you were trying to perceive and this is what you did.
Yeah, it does. And that it kind of merges the two. It's a process. I mean, we just like to call it remote viewing. It's
Right.
It's just, but it is a human experience. But it was, they kind of took it and said, okay, let's kind of remove some of these stigmas around the human faculty, and we'll just explore the faculty without any of the other kind of woo-woo-y kind of things. We'll just kind of bare bones it, and in my opinion, it blends the two very nicely. Without adding a lot of the kind of fantasy type stuff. But I mean, you can add the fantasy in there. I am indulgent.
It creates
in
opportunity for that. Yeah. I mean, you can gravitate. I mean, to me, that's some of the fun stuff, the mystery behind it when you can explore those things, but you can also reduce it back to the bare bones and remove that from it, which I think helps keep you grounded.
Absolutely.
Back in reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was one of the things that I was needing at the time. And I did get it from remote viewing, and it has just continued on and on and on and on and on. And it's just, it's a great way to explore and get to new things via the process that I wouldn't have been able to get to otherwise.
So 20 plus years later, 30,000 hours of remote viewing, as we often say.
Yes, sir.
A lot has changed, a lot of growth and insight. I'm just thinking back on the conversations we've had on the show that have been, I think, valuable, invaluable, just priceless to me. We started with remote viewing QAnon. I want to touch on that in a minute. We looked at the remote viewing Vimanas. I was talking to a friend about that one the other day. That was a powerful show. We looked at Pando, the very old tree, the oldest life form on the planet, and that creation. That was a lot of fun. And I think there was probably one or two more in there.
Pi. We talked about Pi.
We remote viewed Pi, and that one had such a profound impact. And this is what's neat about remote viewing: is you go through an experience, and it changes you. You learn from it. You grow from it. And you've had these experiences through remote viewing that have really shaped things. And even your remote viewing style, I remember after Pi, you've added some new things into how you remote view. Of that, which one, I can't even ask you which one, but what's something that comes to mind is like, wow, that was an amazing experience for me. I want to ask you which is your favorite or the best, but what's something that stands out for you?
Yeah. I know that one is really tough for me to try to nail something down like that. But, I would put it into those categories of the sessions on Pi. I'd say that one was probably the most impactful for me, because it took me into some new places, some new spaces, to understand things that I had never been exposed to before. And what I mean by that is that if we look at something like the ominous feeling sessions from November of 2017, and it's like, okay, well, that was pretty good, but there are things in the collective mindset of viruses and stuff like that. So it's not a new concept. The timing, it was a timing thing. If anything else, if I look at it, it was more of a timing thing than anything else. But with pi, I was going into spaces of ideas and stuff like that I had never heard of before. So they were new, they were novel to me, and that's what's important to me. That kind of stuff. I mean, we've talked about this before. Like, if I'm given a target and the target is a guy standing on the corner, and I draw a guy standing on the corner, some people may go, "Wow, isn't that great?" But to me, it's not great. But if I go into the guy's mind and I learn something new about the guy,
right,
and I get something that is interesting to me, then it's a rewarding experience to me.
Yeah.
So it's just a difference of a point of view.
Do you find, and I was just watching, because I know you've got a lot of stuff on YouTube, and you've got even more in-depth detail on your Patreon. And I think it's a great resource for anybody who's interested in remote viewing, who's going through the process of remote viewing, who's learning remote viewing. As a student myself, to watch Edward's sessions and how he goes through that process, it helps me as a viewer saying, okay, this is how he does it. This is what I'm experiencing, and it gives you just something to compare it to. So I recommend, if you're interested, check out his Patreon, check out his YouTube channel. But you did a target. It was the Golden Gate Bridge. You shared this one recently, I think. And you had this experience you went through and you sketched it out, but then you were paying attention to your process. But you ended up getting all these energetics and fires and smoke, correct? And you looked at that and learned something else from that. Do you mind talking about that experience?
Yeah, sure. I recently reposted that one, but the session was, I think, from about a year ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm working my target, my sensitivity drills, and the training that I do for my explorationary stuff. And I do that all with blind targets from online remote viewing targeting pools, so that I'm completely blind and there's nobody else involved. It's just me and those targets online. So I'm going through working on that one. The target was the Golden Gate Bridge, I believe. And I was beginning to experience a lot of the energetic stuff, fire. I think it was fires and flames, or just the big energy. And so when I looked at the feedback to see that it was the Golden Gate Bridge, I didn't really understand. I didn't have any kind of closure. I didn't understand what was going on. It wasn't until I did for me, the experience had the qualities, the specific qualities of an actual remote viewing. That there were the specific parts of my brain were translating an actual input, and so I had to do a little research. And then boom, I looked at the news, and there was they were in the wildfires were hitting there. So that's I don't know what else I was saying in that video, but it kind of goes to there could be some entropy involved, being drawn to that specific location, but in a time where there's a higher amount of energy.
Right.
So there's probably some of that there. I'm not sure what else I was talking about.
I think that was basically it. Is that you were drawn to that aspect, that point in time, the present moment. I don't think that the target was that moment in time, but that's where you were drawn to with the energy surrounding it. And it raises a question for me. I mean, I try in my practice to look at more verifiable, basic, boring targets than the fun, exciting, crazy woo-woo, because I'm still learning and there's more feedback about. I mean, all the reasons that you have told me. Yes. But do you find that when you look at a basic target, not knowing, is it going to be woo woo? Is it going to be just a building? Do you get bored on some of those targets, and does your mind start to wander and you start pulling in different data if it's just a building and that's all you're looking at?
I don't think so. I'm not saying that couldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
That could definitely happen. Although what I will say is that in the type of and I call it training,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like a boxer or something, or an MMA guy. They train all the time because they're going to
Right.
get into the ring. They're not doing it for fun, or whatever. And I look at my work in that from that perspective. So, but when I'm going into those, I am wanting to experience specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Those experiences are not boring.
Right.
They're very, very interesting. And so my curiosity and those types of things are already stimulated. So even if the target is a building,
Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to experience dimensional sensations.
Yeah.
Because dimensional sensations are not intellectual thing. Oh, building,
Right.
what's a building? It's a different part of the brain that is experiencing something other than an intellectual idea about a building, and that's what I'm after. Whether it's a building or a flat plane or being underwater or something, an entropy like a fire, something like that. Those parts of the brain that I'm looking to become aware of, where those processes are happening, they're not really in the part of the brain that gets bored very easily.
Right. Right. That's a really good point. Can you describe what some of that feels like? You're saying these experiences. Can you describe a recent experience on a situation like that?
Well, I'll explain what I mean by dimensional sensation,
Mm-hmm.
and because these are my terms. These are terms that I've come up with, so they're not not something you can go read in somebody's book or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's in these exploratory sessions that I do, these exploratory works, that I'm looking for certain types of sensations, and then I can explore them. So how I got into calling it dimensional sensation and experiencing dimensional sensation is that there's a part in the brain that I had to experience and go and find. I had to experience it, and then locate it within my own brain.
Mm-hmm.
Experience it more than once, over and over again, and then with verifiable feedback, and then say, well, what part of my brain, what is going on here? What part of my brain is active? Where is this happening? And how can I go and find it? So I located in my brain stem that these signals or this stimulus was happening in my brain stem and in a specific area of my brain stem, which I would then go after the sessions and all that, then go and try to find it on Google or whatever. And there's this part in our called the cerebral peduncle.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that, and I said, "Oh my God, that's the part." So I go and I research it, and lo and behold, that is the part of the brain that they say we experience something called proprioception.
Mm-hmm.
And proprioception is what they how they describe it as the quote unquote sixth sense, or as if you were in a dark room and trying to figure out the dimensionality or what's near you or what's around you, but it's not happening through tactile senses. And so that was a breakthrough. That was a huge breakthrough because in an experience of a dimensional sensation, there is the sense of a mass,
Mm-hmm.
its dimensionality, its and how it is in its expression towards me, meaning that where I am in relationship to it, and how it feels. So there have been ones where I'm in a crowd, literally in a crowd of people.
Mm-hmm.
The proprioception has me surrounded by entropy, active life forms, and I'll describe it, and I'll go check the feedback, and the concert was Woodstock or something like that,
Right.
where the large amounts of people. And so that's what I'm talking about. Now, I'll take that as an example. I did have a sensation that I was surrounded by people. My brain somewhere took that proprioception, that dimensional sensation, and linked it with the idea that these were people around me as opposed to inside of a barrel somewhere,
Right.
or something where I was surrounded by things, because it could be anything. It doesn't have to be people; it could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
But in that one, yeah, it had processed into people, conversations, loudness. They're close to me, their body temperatures, and all that kind of stuff. But it's that there's mass there. There's a dimensional aspect to it, and it's hard to explain. You need to experience it to
Right.
to know to really know what that means. It's not that easy to describe in words.
I think you did a pretty good job. And my first thought on that, though, is that's fascinating that while you're in a session, you're recognizing where this sensation is originating in your body, in your mind, in your brain, to pinpoint it to that location, to then get that feedback piece that, I think verifies. I mean, there's real scientific value in that, real research value. I'm reading one of Ingo's books right now, one of the new ones that was out, I think 2019. What's it called? Let me look at my catalog here. It's called Psychic Literacy.
Mhm.
And it just talks about Ingo's research and trying to understand the process and how this works and where it comes from. And I just think that's such a valuable piece of insight for people
Yeah.
that do research into this, that you're able to obtain that information just through your own experience and then find the feedback for it. I think that's
Yeah.
huge.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I have to qualify it and say that was my intention going into it.
Mm-hmm.
Was okay. I want to experience dimensional sensations now with this, and that's what I go in looking for in those sessions. I want to go in and I want to try to locate. Here will be the process. I'll have a target online database target,
Mm-hmm.
which is the feedback reference ID link. I'll go to my board. I have the reference ID ready. It's on there. I will. Then I'm waiting for some type of internal indication that an input or has been recognized.
Mm-hmm.
Something has happened, and I have a sensation or a feeling that it has been acquired. Then, once I have some type of internal verification, and now I want to go ahead and look and become aware of any type of sensations that I'm experiencing. If I'm not really doing anything, I'll go and I'll do some ideograms.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though in my explorations, I am of the opinion that it is an automatic process. It is an automatic process, meaning that it's there instantly.
Mm-hmm.
The time that it gets from where it is ignited to our above threshold awareness, that can vary. It could be instant, or it could take a little bit of time. If you look through some of my videos, it's like maybe 2 minutes later, and then blammo, there it is. So why does it take so much time? That's the next part of the exploration. Why did it take so much time? It just feeds itself. It's just ongoing. Pulling and pulling and pulling, and then it's like, okay, well, all right. First, I want to make sure I got something real. I want a real dimension with all the qualities that I've come to know. And then I want to use that to go and bring my awareness into the part of my brain. And that, which is nothing really new. The yogis do it. You know it too. Contemplate your navel. What does that mean? Bring your awareness to your navel and
Right.
so you're bringing your awareness to another part of your body. I'm doing the same thing inside of my own brain.
Yeah.
And I've been able to find some things that I haven't seen anyone publish before. So as far as I know, some of the things that I've been able to find are novel, and so that gives it some importance to me to want to publish it, put it out there for other people to see it.
And that's a huge point, and I'm incredibly grateful for you doing that and doing that kind of work and sharing that. And I just keep saying to anybody that's interested in learning remote viewing, your content is, I'd say, on the must watch list. It really helps you understand the process and feel comfortable with it. And I'd say even can alert you to recognize certain aspects of the experience while you're going through it. Of course, go out and have your own experience, but hearing, viewers like Edward talk about it, I think just gives you a little more confidence as you're going through your journey. And again, just it's amazing that you're exploring these things that I think as a new viewer, you normally wouldn't think about. You're like, oh, I want to go out and I want to sketch the building and get that drawing right. Because that's exciting when it's new to you. I want to get that current event story and draw it,
Right.
But you're so far beyond that now. And I think having that in the back of your mind is helpful in recognizing, hey, there's a lot more going on here than just, can I draw the picture correctly?
Exactly. And it took a long time to get to that point. Because what you're describing is the typical process, or I'd say the normal process,
right,
that anyone would go through. Is that first they want to draw the building. I mean, they want to do that, and if they don't, then you got to go through all the what happens after that. you know, and then if you do, then you got to go through what happens after that. So.
Right.
That's part of the 30,000 hour thing, to get, kind of work through a lot of that stuff. And it really, you have to work through a lot of that stuff, and it's not easy. And sometimes it's just really sucks. And other times it's incredibly, it's amazing. But that's what, like I say, man, it's training.
It really is a mental martial art. I understand that now. It's a mental martial art, but it filters through. I mean, as any martial art, your entire life, your way of being, your way of perceiving, your way of acting. You told me at the very beginning of our friendship, it'll kick your ass, it'll chew you up and spit you out. And I had no understanding really the context of that until I experienced it. And then you were there to make fun of me online about it. So, because I was crying online, like, man, I can't hit any targets. What's going on?
Yeah.
And it did. And it's still kicking my ass,
Oh, yeah, man. That's not going to end. That's not going to end,
No, that's the growth though. But that's why, again, I appreciate you sharing your work and sharing that, hey, because I think people would give up at that point sometimes. But when you hear, nope, this is normal, this is part of your learning experience, it keeps you going to hear somebody say, yep, I've been through that, and you'll get through it too.
Exactly. It's I think we talked about this pretty far in the beginning as well, is that, there is the point where a lot of people won't be able to go beyond. And it's that phase that really separates people out.
Yeah.
If they can't handle that part, they're not going to make it through. And it's kind of designed that way. Like any discipline or any spiritual. The old school spiritual practices, they were life or death. You had to overcome something in order to pass that initiation. Now don't really have it, like have that kind of thing. But you do have it with remote viewing, and it is that it'll beat your ego to a bloody pulp.
Mhm.
And if you can make it through that, then you've made progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that
It-
fear is like a gatekeeper on any spiritual journey. And it
yeah.
stops people from going forward. And other people say, okay, I'm going to push through this and get my ass kicked in the process. When you come
Yes.
out, you're different. You're wiser.
Yeah.
And until the next ass kicking, it
Yeah.
doesn't stop. But
That's right. That's right. It's like the movie Lord of the Rings.
Mhm.
I forget which one it was, but Gandalf the Grey. He's doing all that work, man. He's busting
Yeah.
ass and he's fighting dragons, this, that, and he's doing everything. And then he falls and dies. And then what happened? He comes back. He's Gandalf the White.
Yeah.
He. You know what I mean? He didn't.
And that
go,
story he gives, I think he said he was gone for 1,000 lifetimes in that process. He was gone for a very long time through his experience. And that's a heavy piece of information that he says there.
Yeah, yeah, and we're talking about the same kind of thing here. Just it's less physically painful,
Right.
but it is emotionally and mentally can be brutal.
Yeah, it really does. You can walk away feeling pretty depressed for a while in just trying to process. I think that's with sometimes it's just a paradigm shift, and you have to and I equate it to our minds are like a low grade hard drive, and then we get a zip file that comes in, and it takes a while for that file to unpack because our processor is not quick enough to just instantly download and absorb that information. So it takes some time, and there's some emotional turmoil as that process, that unpackaging is happening.
Sure, and that is happening, and then you realize that what you think should happen, the difference between what you think should happen and what actually does happen. You're hit with that kind of a reality,
Right.
and reality can be tough. So that's why I was drawn to remote viewing, because that's what I wanted. I wanted that. Some of the things that I had done, some people thought it was amazing and great, but at the end of the day, I was always left going, I don't know, maybe I made that shit up.
Yeah. That's a tough moment, because in the moment it's so real. But then the more time passes, you start to doubt yourself and say, well, this could have been imagination. This could have been anything but what it's telling me. Yeah, that's a hard one.
Yeah, it was. And remote viewing, again, offered a way to practice and explore and see what was real and what was possible. So I'm grateful for that. And just like, and then I had to take it into the areas that I wanted to go in of exploration that I just couldn't find anywhere else other than some of Ingo's work,
right?
Because he was a big inspiration for my exploration was from reading what he was doing.
Yeah.
And so that was a big inspiration for me. So I'm very grateful for Ingo.
And as am I. And I don't think a lot of people take that press. Sorry, my daughter's in the background. You can probably hear her making all this noise. But I don't think a lot of people take it that far. And that's okay. Because like you said, that this level of the journey is now, or I should say this aspect of the journey is not for everybody to explore in that sense. Some of us are okay with just getting that piece of data, getting that feedback, and that's okay. I drew the building. I identified the emotion or the event. Because it gets scary again.
Or the sexy stuff. And I think we might have talked about this before, but one of my biggest disappointments is that Ingo Swann's most popular book is his book Penetration, about the moon stuff, and and to me that should be at the bottom of the list. And book, Natural Guide to ESP, is his most important book.
Mm-hmm.
But what you're saying is true and absolutely correct, because what he's talking about in Natural Guide to ESP is not sexy, and it's a hell of a lot of work, and it loses a lot of people right at the beginning. But if you're talking about, talking to aliens on the moon, anybody, everybody wants to read that.
Well, it's an interesting story, whether it's true or not. It's an entertaining story, and to think, wow, this might be real. I mean, right? It's sexy, like you said.
It's sexy stuff, man.
But you are a craftsman. You're a technician. This is your craft that you're continually honing, like a professional athlete. So they love all that boring technical aspects, rewatching reels of the game, and studying the intricacies of other players and how they do things. When you listen to a professional player describe how someone, like even fighters, just describing someone's stance and the subtle differences and how they throw their punches or their kicks, and that's what you're after. That's what you're interested in that level of it.
That is very true. Very true.
Yeah. Exciting. But looking at some of that fun, sexy stuff, because I know some of our listeners want to pick your brain about some of that stuff as well, Edward. I'm gonna shift gears a little bit. I think it's important to get that background out. But something that always comes to mind, and I'll give the caveat, and I'm sure you'll give it again for entertainment purposes right now, because we're going to get into some of the unverifiable stuff. But I mean, let's start with the big one. Was that ominous feeling? I know you did a follow-up video not too long ago, about 5 minutes long, with some of the feedback that you've received.
Mm-hmm.
What have you learned from that experience? What do you think that data set tells you and refers to? And this is 2017. You started getting this signal line.
Correct. The big feedback for me regarding that, because when the virus hit, and it was the COVID thing, and you saw the little balls with the pointy things, and I looked back at my session and it's like, oh man, I saw the virus coming, but I didn't draw any ball with pokey things on it.
Right.
So I didn't understand that part. But I didn't. I was stuck in a situation of going, well, maybe I deciphered that part incorrectly, or something along those lines. But I didn't really feel that was the case, and so I just had to wait. And then somebody sent me a message that said, "Look at this," and it was about how the virus was causing the body to produce an excessive amount of a specific type of protein that caused blood clots. And it's called fibrin. And typically, if you cut your hand and you're bleeding, the body says, okay, we need to produce this protein and send it over there so we can stop that hemorrhaging or whatever. And it's a kind of an as needed process. But with this thing, it was tricking the brain into thinking that it needed to produce more of that. And somebody sent me an article and an image of that, and it looked exactly like what I was drawing. And when I was talking about the fiber and the whole thing, and that this was a big part of this problem. And so that was probably the most profound feedback, because again, it kind of goes back to our earlier conversation. That you draw the building, and there's the building, and oh boy, look at me, pat me on the back, everybody, give me a cookie. But with this one, that I had to wait on that one. So it's a little bit tougher, because again, you're going through that. Maybe I got some of this right and some of this wrong. But that was that was um, that was the feedback regarding the ominous feeling sessions that told me, okay, that's something, you
What
know.
What's curious and a little bit different about that target too is that you weren't tasked. Well, you weren't tasked in the traditional sense. I don't know where this data came from and how it came to you. You picked up on a signal line that was out there, and you just said, because I guess obviously you're sensitive to these things, and this was probably such a large emotional marker out there in the ether. But then you used remote viewing to unpack that feeling. So there was no real tasking other than figure out what this feeling is.
That's correct. Yeah, it was one of those experiences, and I know you can relate to this. Was like um, I experienced something that morning, and then I had to, in my mind, deal with, okay, that was pretty interesting. I want to know what that is more. Or I
Yeah.
can just say, I'm going to get on with my day, this kind of thing. But the part of me was saying, I should review that. I should
Yeah.
take this into a session. And then the other part is saying, maybe, whatever, get on with the day, go eat breakfast, or, but and you know this, when you feel you need to go somewhere, when you feel,
Mhm.
oh, wait a minute, something just happened, it's important, I need to act on this.
Yeah.
It was one of those things, like, I need to act on this. So it had those qualities, and I know those feelings. Those feelings.
Yeah.
People who have had those kinds of experience. You know the level of
Yeah.
impact.
It's a different feeling that we'll say it eventually presents itself as a thought, but that's not how it starts. And I think as people go through this journey of just spiritual growth, remote viewing or not, you'll start to experience, hey, I'm thinking about something a different way, and this feels different. Let's explore it.
Yeah, yeah. I get this message, and I'm gonna follow it.
Yeah.
Um, and when you do, I think we even had this conversation before. That when you get that type of impulse, when you get that kind of inspiration, when you do follow it, you're like, wow, man, I'm glad I followed that. That
Yeah.
just, now I feel alive, and I'm a part of the universe and all that kind of stuff. You're
Yeah.
interacting. And so, though it's great when it happens, man. You
Yeah.
got to
It's
act on it.
terrifying, but it's yes, it's a one of those almost life changing. It's just such a fulfilling experience that you learn from.
Yeah.
And so the question I ask you, with that experience, do you have any idea where that comes from? Where that data came from, and why it came to you?
Well, I have had to think about that for a long time now,
Hmm.
and um, what I have researched was that the Wuhan lab
Hmm.
had some kind of emergency happen in November of 2017.
Mm,
Not something that was, publicized.
right.
It was publicized after the virus came out, and then someone said, "Oh, well, in the records was that they had, I can't remember what it was, but
Right.
there was something there."
Yeah.
And so when I'm looking at it, I have to contemplate. Well, I'll look at it from several different altitudes here. On one altitude, maybe that's emergency situation they had sent a signal into the collective unconscious, and a chain reaction was set off that 2 years later would come into play,
Hmm.
and grow exponentially. based off of that one thing. Maybe that's what it was, and the magnitude of it hit me. Or maybe it was a future event that was rippling back in time. Or maybe it was I have already experienced the future, and I gave myself an impulse of what was inevitably going to come.
Right.
Or it was some type of inspiration from somewhere else that we could contemplate all kinds of different scenarios relating to that. So, like I've said, I don't deal in absolutes. I deal in possibilities and probabilities, and there's a possibility and probability. It could be any and all of those things.
Right.
And
each one is equally interesting and fantastic to think about and contemplate. Did you send this to yourself? Was it just such an emotional signal that was sent out, and you just, because you're sensitive, you happened to pick up on it? So why didn't other sensitives pick up on it? Maybe they did, but they didn't publish anything on it. But there's so many things that I wonder about as to the why. It's a very curious thing to ponder. And I think those are great possibilities that you share with that. And again, I'm thankful you put that part of the experience out there for us to experience. And it's something I watch very closely, and I'm always looking for feedback on that one. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, somebody had sent me something, another thing recently, about it. And, I kind of forgot about it. I didn't really act on it immediately. I kind of forgot about it, but I'm getting more, I'm still getting feedback, people sending me stuff, related to that session. I tell you, man, it's hard to keep it all in line, because we're doing so much remote viewing. And
that's just it. You work so many targets, and there's so much that's thrown at you, and those targets. And I look at a lot of your work I think, I don't know how or why, but I think that a lot of the work you do, a lot of the targets you've experienced and shared, there's an interconnection there. There's a thread, there's a theme that's painting a bigger picture here. Things that are seemingly unrelated, from Pando to Vimanas to QAnon to the Earth's core to Pi. There's a theme there. There's a thread there that paints a picture. I think that when someday the great analysts go through your work, are going to be able to compile an amazing story and an incredible picture of our greater reality, which kind of leads me to another question then. In based on your experience and what you've seen and learned, how would you describe this reality as you see it now? Not an absolute, just as you see it. What is this?
Well, when you're asking that question, it does bring me to the Pi sessions, and this notion that we are existing in a sphere realm. This is the sphere realm, and we are born into it, and that this is, there are others, but this one is the sphere, the realm of spheres.
What does that mean, spheres?
That, well, I mean, depending on how we want to describe, we could say that we live in a bubble.
Okay.
We live in a realm that is a sphere that is based on spheres, and things that are grown out of it are grown from spheres, and we, our physical bodies, do the same, and that when conception happens, it is a sphere that separates into two, and more and more and more. So we're literally born into a body of spheres. And that, that's where we find ourselves in this realm. And that again is just one of those things that just was like, getting, going into being an initiate into the great mysteries, the great mystery schools. But remote viewing is the teacher.
Yeah.
Remote viewing takes me there. So that is how I see it. And also, I do consider myself a Taoist.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main images is the yin yang symbol.
Yeah.
And it is a sphere. And within the sphere is the wave of equilibrium. And so my soul or whatever, my life stream is agrees with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get a lot of aspects of reality from myself as a Taoist.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that I've studied. I can say, yeah, I was in a Gnostic order. I was lived with some psychics, archangel people, and all this. But did I live with a Taoist? No. It's just something that comes through me.
Yeah, that common thread throughout all those experiences, you recognize, hey, this path, whatever it is, even though I haven't been taught it, I'm living through it.
Yeah, it's like right behind all of that stuff is that thing,
Yeah, mm-hmm.
and that I agree with. So, and again, it's inside of the sphere, and and this is where everything happens here for us, and so that's how I look at it. And again, I do look at it from an aspect of equilibrium. And I've even kind of jokingly said, I come from the order of equilibrium, where everything is ebbing and flowing up and through the line of equality. And it's either when it gets too positive, it finds resistance. When it gets too negative, it finds support. And the Earth moves that way, and the solar system wobbles, that way. And it's just it models our reality, and how we experience reality.
Trying to find that balance.
Sure, man. Like I say, my robe is half black and half white. I don't, you know what I mean? Because I'm always seeking that equilibrium.
And we, a lot of times we look for that peace. And we, when I started this journey, it was like, well, how do I end suffering? How do I make everybody happy? But when you really stop and think about that, you got to have those darker aspects, because otherwise it doesn't work. That's the motivation. That's the teaching tool. That's what encourages us to push forward. That utopia, it's a beautiful concept. And in the eyes of suffering, you never want to see that. But I think on some grander scale, it's necessary for growth. And when you look at it that way, it shifts that perspective of, wow, everything sucks and we're just here to be tortured. And, because I can go down that path, and there's days where I still feel that way because, things get hard.
Yeah.
But I like to think of it that way, in terms of, the bigger picture here is that we can learn and we can grow, even in the face of that horrible darkness.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really feel that that is the way to look at things.
Mm-hmm.
And it would probably be put into, because I've been thinking about this recently, the difference between intelligence and wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about here would fall more into the realm of wisdom.
Yeah.
Because intelligence is a dime a dozen,
Right.
Wisdom takes some effort,
It's applying that intel. Forgive me, I've got a background noise right now. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but that wisdom is being able to apply critically that intelligence that you've acquired. You're right. Anybody can just spit out, "Hey, I know this." Okay, big deal. Can you apply that appropriately into a complex situation? Not
Yeah.
always.
Yeah. Or like I like to look at it like in the realm of repeaters. You know, anybody can repeat what someone else said. You
Yeah.
know, but well, forget about what somebody else said. I want to
Right.
know how you think about it. What do
Right.
you feel about it? What
What did
is
you
your
experience?
perspective? What is your wisdom on that?
Yeah.
That's that's what gets my ears perked up. You know.
Yeah. I think that's a very important point. And I want to say this not from a point of ego or arrogance, but you hear it, the difference when you have conversations in certain circles where someone just starts repeating dogma, the trending threads, and they can repeat it quite well and it all logically makes sense
Hmm.
versus someone who says, "Yeah, I know all that. Here's what I've done with it."
Yeah.
And it gives it a different flavor, a different spin. And that's always my encouragement is it's great to learn this stuff, but what are you doing with it? How are
Yeah.
you interpreting that and experiencing that? You're right.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Yeah. It's and you know there's and you can apply like you know what are you doing with it, but how are you being with it? And the wisdom aspect is being able to just sit in a state of being, you know, and
Yeah.
look at both sides, you know, watch the ebb and the flow, the yin yang element of it, and come up with a perspective from from being with it, and that's what I like too. The intelligence, you know, they always, you know, intelligent people always want to tell you how smart they are.
Yeah. That's the
You know,
truth.
they just
Yeah.
go out of their way to tell you how smart they are. You
Yeah.
know, which is totally fine. But
Right.
I am more interested in wisdom. I'm very interested in wisdom. I'm finding you can find intelligent people all over. Finding wise people is not as easy, man. You know,
Yeah.
finding somebody with wisdom is
Well,
not as easy.
I think also a lot of times once you reach that state of wisdom, and I'm not claiming to be there, um, they're more quiet. They're observers at that point, and less
Yes,
asked.
that's
They're not
correct.
the
Yeah,
ones trying to go wake people up and say, "Hey, you need to know this. You need to look at this." It's more, I'll be quiet, and then it's one of those when the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
yeah,
So they're not going to be advertising that wisdom. But if
yeah.
you're paying attention, you can find, I think, the people who have that to share and are willing to discuss it.
Sure. And you know, to bring this back to remote viewing is you know the experience is no different with remote viewing in that if I'm trying to force myself, let's say with my experimental stuff, if I'm trying to force myself to do it because my you know and my intellect is saying I gotta do this, I gotta put a video out, I gotta blah 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 blah. Um, typically, I'm not going to get the kind of experience that I'm looking for, and it can be very frustrating. Um, but from the other perspective is the understanding, and that's where the wisdom part comes in, of being able to, now is the time to go and do that now,
That makes a lot of sense.
you know?
Yeah, personally, yeah, it does
Yeah.
because it's a feeling,
Yeah.
and if you're trying to force that feeling, sometimes it's just. I mean, let your intuition guide you, as I'm always saying. I mean, and if
Yeah.
you're forcing it, you're not going to get the same results. If your reason is just for let me create some content, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really does. Edward, we're coming up on the end of our time here. I have 1,000 more questions for you, but we'll just have to do it again sometime.
Okay.
But any final thoughts? I mean, it's been a crazy year and a half. You've worked some
Yeah.
amazing targets and sessions. What do you want to leave us with on this one here?
Well, I want to leave with this. I was thinking about this yesterday. in regards to the metaverse and AI and these types of things that are really in the collective mind right now. And I know a lot of people are afraid of that kind of thing. And I get this often about how I feel about that kind of thing. And it boils down to this: when the metaverse is created, it will be an amazing thing. It'll be an incredible feat of human ingenuity, as long as someone can find the equilibrium. I'm going to use this to learn something. And you learn it, and then you can set it down and go about yourself. If you swing too far out and say, "Oh, this is terrible. This is the worst. This is the devil," there's a possibility you may miss something. On the other spectrum, if you delve into it and lose yourself, that is bad as well. If you can find the equilibrium with technology and what is coming with technology, you will find that it is an incredible learning tool where we are taking all the things that we've learned in humanity over thousands of years, putting them into a huge database that now we can access at will. That is an incredible feat of human ingenuity. And just make sure that you find the equilibrium into what you need from it. And you will be fine. We will be fine. And we will begin to move very fast. So that's what I wanted to leave everyone with.
I'm so thankful you said that. My last show, I dove into the metaverse. And I really, when I first started this journey, I got that tool that we're talking about, looking at AI. And my initial reaction was, this is bad. This is the takeover. But I think it's very important to recognize that this is here and there is some benefit. And for some people, they will benefit more than others from this because there's so much potential for good that can come from this.
Absolutely.
But like you said, find that equilibrium. I think that's an awesome piece of wisdom and advice there, Edward. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
So you have, you've got a lot going on with crypto viewing. People, I know we have some crypto fans that listen, and thank you to all of you out there. But you also have your YouTube channel, which there's just a wealth of information, and you've got a lot of stuff on Patreon. You want to talk for a minute about what you have available out there for people?
Yeah, I got a lot of free stuff, years worth of free stuff on the YouTube. Mm-hmm. I do have a Patreon. It's just $5 a month for anybody who would like to have a little bit more. And I put stuff up as I'm inspired to put it up. If I'm not inspired, I don't do anything. When I am inspired, I utilize that as much as I can, and I create as much as possible, and then I put it up. And then the inspiration then, dips back under, and then I wait. What I mean?
Right.
So there are times when there's not a lot, and then there's times when there's more. And
but I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't want to interrupt.
No, that's what I was saying.
This has always stuck with me from our first conversation. I believe this in my heart. I mean, you're an artist, and remote viewing is your art and it's your craft. You're a craftsman with this, and I think that supporting your work is a wonderfully beautiful thing because it really is a gift. And I think that years from now, decades from now, I think people will look back on your work and still learn from it. Not just about our greater reality and some of the things that you've explored, but about this system and this process and our own humanity and what we're capable of. And I think for those that are other craftsmen out there who are taking this journey, $5 to get a glimpse into your mind is a steal. As you go through it, just being able to get that piece, I think is so helpful on this journey. So I thank you for what you leave behind for all of us, Edward. I think it's an amazing contribution to humanity, really. So thank you for everything that you do.
Yeah, thank you. If, like you say, in 100 years from now or whatever, if anything that I've done is useful, then it's a life well lived, and so I'm doing my best.
You're doing an awesome job, my friend, and I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for our friendship, and I'm thankful for everything that you've shared. We're out of time now, my friends. So this has been Edward Reardon. You can find him on YouTube. You can find him at Crypto Viewing. You can find him on Patreon. Figures just as I'm in the show, that background noise turns off on me. But you can find Edward. Just Google his name, and there's hours and hours and hours and days and weeks of fantastic content. And it'll leave your mind percolating for a very long time. So thank you, Edward, for being a guest on my show once again. I'm Dennis Nappy II. This has been another episode of the Seiker Podcast, where small changes among the masses can have a massive impact around the world. I encourage you to be that change. Never stop questioning. Keep an open mind. And let your intuition be your guide.
Be water, my friend. Be water, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend. Be water, my friend, my friend.